Perfect.
So at the top of the aura, I have to be in art. These cherubs are always pictures, these little cute little babies together, squeeze their cheeks. And it says that Hashem is going to speak where they meet. So you think this wonderful is full of love. It's full, and that's your picture.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to this morning's shir. Thank everybody for coming. Today's shir, we want to pick up. About 6 weeks ago, we did a shir on Rav Henkin, where we tried to define a halachic personality, not just on a biographical sketch, but based on his halacha. Because people's halacha, a posik's halacha, that gives us a glimpse into the true person, true halachic man. And this week we decided to take up the stature of Ovadia Yosef. One Ashkenazi, one Sephardi. Maybe next time we'll do, I don't know what else is in between. Hasidic posik. Ovadia Yosef is absolutely an amazing, amazing story. And just to give a short biographical background, in fact, I believe here the biographical background is important for understanding the halacha and stances that he took. We know, I guess he summarized who Ovadia Yosef was in one line. He was this Adam Gadol of super caliber, tremendous posik, who was the posik for the Sephardic world, but really affected a lot of the Ashkenazic world too. And if there's one man who just uplifted the entire Sephardic people, it was Ovadia Yosef. And at his levaya, which was attended, one of the biggest levayas ever in Eretz Yisrael, Yerushalayim, was attended by close to 1 million people. It was unbelievable the effect that he had on so many. Ovadia was born in 1920 in Baghdad. Baghdad, Iraq, had a big Jewish community and very much influenced by the Sephardic Gaon, the Ben Ish Chai, Rav Yosef Chaim. So much so, Ovadia Yosef was named after him. The name Yosef was named for the Ben Ish Chai. In fact, it's interesting. Ovadia Yosef's last name was not Yosef. It was really Ovadia. His father's name was Yaakov Ovadia. Now, really, the name Ovadia that his father had, I think he inherited from his father. So, in Sephardic custom, you could name a child after your parent, alive or deceased. So he wanted to name after his father, so he named his oldest son Ovadia. Ovadia Yosef, Ovadia. So obviously that's not the best name for a kid to have in school. Might get picked on Ovadia. So he kept as a surname his second name, Ovadia Yosef, and that's what the family keeps today. But Yosef is very important. That name came from the Ben Ish Chai. He was named after the Ben Ish Chai. He was born in Baghdad, but by the age of 4, his family moved to Eretz Yisrael, and he started learning in Eretz Yisrael. There he had some degree of exposure. One of the other big Sephardic poskim, besides the Ben Ish Chai, was someone named the Kaf HaChaim, Rabbi Yaakov Chaim Sofer. In fact, he was studying in the same base shul as a young kid with the Kaf HaChaim, and an earthquake hit Eretz Yisrael, hit Yerushalayim. It was a 6.2. An entire shul that he was learning in shook, and this little kid was quite scared of the situation. This Chacham, the Kaf HaChaim, went, found him in the building, tried escorting him out. They found that the stairway down was demolished by the earthquake. Luckily, they were able to scream for help, and they brought ladders up, and they got down this Chacham, the Kaf HaChaim, together with young Ovadia Yosef. Years later, it's quite interesting, after the Kaf HaChaim was nifter, he wrote an entire amazing set of Sfarim on halacha. He was short finishing, I think, the Chelik and Yeridea by a few simanim. And they needed somebody, they wanted to publish a complete set on all of Shulchan Aruch. How are they going to do that? Who would have the Bekias? So a young Ovadia Yosef was drafted for that task, and he finished up the writing of the Kaf HaChaim, paying back a Hakaras HaTov to the Rav who helped save his life. He went and enrolled in the yeshiva Parat Yosef. Parat Yosef is one of the oldest Sephardic yeshivas, right? They have a building in the Old City. Unfortunately, it's their second building in the Old City. First one was destroyed by the Arabs. In fact, now they have another building in Geula. In fact, the yeshiva Parat Yosef, who was Yosef that it was named after? The same, the Ben Ish Chai. He was behind the starting of the yeshiva, and they named the yeshiva Parat Yosef. So there's a lot of influence in the Sephardic world in those days, very much so by the Ben Ish Chai. Ovadia really had a few different stints. He was in Parat Yosef as a yeshiva. He was learning there. The Rebbe, which he became most, was his Rebbe Muvak, was Ezra Atiyah, who was Rosh Yeshiva in Parat Yosef, and he was very close to him. So much so, this is in the early 20th century. We know the poverty situation in Israel was tremendous. There is rampant poverty everywhere, and Ovadia Yosef's family suffered from it. And part of the way they made parnasa was they had a little grocery shop. And at a certain point, his father said it was too hard to do. He needed help. And he asked his young son, who was already learning in yeshiva, if he could take off some time during the day and come to the shop. Story has it, it's been confirmed, that he was gone for a day or two, and they noticed Ovadia Yosef, the young prized Talmud in the yeshiva, wasn't there. The Rosh Yeshiva, Ezra Atiyah, went to the store and asked, what's with young Ovadia? So his father said, look, I need him in the store. Without batting an eyelash, this Chacham, Ezra Atiyah, took off his rabbinic jacket, went to the back, saw there was an apron, started putting on the apron. He said, I'll work in your store, but let him sit and learn. That made obviously a big impact on Ovadia's parents. They let him return. He was already, at the age of 17, he was already giving speeches, shiurim, to people. Not just younger talmidim in the yeshiva, but he already was giving shiurim to adults. Ovadia Yosef had this charismatic interaction with his audience, And for years, he was always able to give shiurim to all types of chachamim, but also balabatim. In fact, one of his early shiurim, very interesting, the way he did it was he would tell stories and jokes. Throughout the years, there was always, if you listen to his Motzei Shabbos shir, there always are stories and jokes. He would interdispense with all the halacha, the Torah that he was teaching. In fact, one of the ways he got people to come was, I don't know if he made up or told over a story, but he told over the story as a serial, little bits each day. This way, people wanted to know the story, so they kept on coming back each night to hear the story. In fact, sometimes the people would shepherd him, he'd go on and on teaching halacha. So they said to him, Lo ha-medrash hu ha-ikar, ela ha-maisa. Really, the Chazal means the ikar is not just learning, it's the actions. But it's a play on words. No, we're not just coming for your drashas, we're coming for the stories. That's how he did it. He was appointed a dayan at the age of 22. Got married, had different positions. By 1947, which means he was 27 years old, he was appointed, it was actually his Rebbeim encouraged it, to become the chief rabbi of Egypt, of Cairo. And that's the period of time, Yosef Hurad Mitzrayim, he went down to Mitzrayim, and he did a lot for the community, but there was also a strong resistance to his strong Torah teachings, and the relationship didn't last. He was there for about 3 years. They came back to Eretz Yisrael. He was in Kolol, learned in different places, started writing Svarim. In 1969, he became the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv. And 1973, he became the Rav Rashi, the chief rabbi of Israel, a position that he held, chief Sephardic rabbi of Israel, position that he held for 10 years, from 73 to 83. Share would not cover all the politics of him opening the Shas party. He started just like there's this Chinuch Atzmo system of yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael, which are dati schools trying to inculcate Torah learning amongst the masses in Israel. When he saw that that wasn't fulfilling to the fullest for the Sfardim, he started a similar track for them. And like we said, by the time he was nifter, what this one man accomplished for Sephardic Jewry is unbelievable. I decided, in terms of understanding this person through the prism of halacha, I want to pick on 3 areas. I think these 3 areas will show a lot about the person, his perspective in halacha, and his impact on Klal Yisrael, and why Rav Yosef truly is a Gadol for all people. Now, the first area is not one specific shaila. It's a general approach to psak halacha. Now, Rav Yosef, there's no shaila, was somebody who was fit to be a posek. He was somebody that absolutely mastered. He was a genius. Many say he had a photographic memory. He loved Svarim. He got his hands on any sefer possible. And you read the tshuvas. The longest, he wrote a set of Yabia Omer Shal Tshuvos, which are 10 volumes. And this is the size print. The amount of tshuvas that he quotes, of sources that he quotes, to any question dwarfs anybody else. The amount of bekiyas that he had, the length and breadth is unbelievable. So he was a tremendous Talmid Chacham, tremendous Gadol, tremendous posek. And as we'll get to the stories, he had the right to do what he did. Till Ovadia came about, the Sephardic world was probably quite fragmented. And there's good reason for that, right? The Sephardic world is made up from many different communities throughout the Middle East, other areas. And over the centuries, different minhagim, different ideas. You know, a Yemenite Jew won't look the same as a Moroccan Jew. Bukharian won't look the same as a Persian. Right? A Georgian, a Mexican, an Iraqi. Everybody was different. And there are a lot of differences and nuances in halacha in the Sephardic world. It's probably easy to say, you know, the 10 lost tribes, you know, there are 10 tribes of Sephardim. All different. And one of the biggest forces in the Sephardic world, as we mentioned before, was the Ben Ish Chai. Right? That's the Yosef that Ovadia carried his name his whole life. And that's the Parat Yosef. The Ben Ish Chai lived one generation before Ovadia. In fact, the Ben Ish Chai's son passed away the day of Ovadia. Ovadia was the oldest son in the family. And there was a Pidyon Haben. At the Levaya, at the end of the Levaya, for the son of the Ben Ish Chai, Ovadia Yosef's father invited everyone to come to the Pidyon Haben. There were thousands of people at young Ovadia Yosef's Pidyon Haben. So they overlapped somewhat the generations, Ben Ish Chai's family and Ovadia's family. There were people that learned by the Ben Ish Chai, which also learned and had a shaykhus to Ovadia Yosef. So there's one sefer, if you look at the top of your sheets, one of the first things that when Ovadia was asked to give share, he was asked to give share on the sefer Ben Ish Chai. And this is a sefer that Ovadia Yosef knew quite well. Somebody testifies he was once in Ovadia's study, and the shal came up with Ben Ish Chai, so he went. Ovadia asked him to get the sefer off the shelf. This Rav got the sefer off the shelf. He flipped through the pages. There's no room on any margin. On every single margin of this page was tremendous notes that Ovadia Yosef had on it. He read through the sefer quite well. He respected it a lot, and he gave share on it. But let me read to you this introduction that Rabbi Ovadia himself wrote. This is in the Sefer Halichos Olam, which is Ovadia Yosef's psakim with the Ben Ish Chai. It says, Hine b'mei chorfi ach shekibalti rishus me'esar Mori Hagon of Ezra Atiyah. When I was young, after I had smicha from my Rebbe, Rav Ezra Atiyah, ischalti limsa shir kalacha al pi seder Rav Ben Ish Chai. Lakal kodesh me'oli fras, kulam ahuvim, kulam beruim. I started giving a share to some French Jews, right? All beloved, all beautiful. Hakoveim itim Torah. These were balabatim, people, kavei itim Torah. Ladas chachma musar, lahavin imrei bina, to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Torah. V'kodem mesiras asher yisi mamech chaka b'chol halacha v'halacha. Before I gave the share, I prepared every halacha. Ladas echanolik halacha l'maisel ho'as b'nei Yisrael. I knew I'm giving a share practically for these people. These balabatim are walking away from my share. I want them to know halacha l'maisa. Rori isi b'sefer Ben Ish Chai kama v'kama halachos neged das maron hashulchan aruch. When I look through these halachos well, I realize a lot of these halachos that the Ben Ish Chai are writing are not like the psak of the Machaber in the Shulchan Aruch, the Bet Yosef. Hey mishum sharav ish chasida milan. Firstly, this Rav was a big tzaddik, a big chassid, and sometimes he was more machmer and went different than the Shulchan Aruch. Hein mishum shekein hisken midaita harachava. But sometimes because he argued with him based on his own stature. Ulam l'datenu divrei ran Shulchan Aruch nechom Yosef amitim. However, it appears that the words of the Maron Shulchan Aruch are more correct and more true. The Machaber of the Shulchan Aruch has the stature of being the Mara da Asra, the Rav of the town being Israel, Eretz Yisrael. The Beis Yosef lived in Eretz Yisrael. He had the stature of being the Mara da Asra. Kamosha Amru, the Gemara in Shabbos says, Kamosha Rabbi Eliezer, or Karsim Eitzim B'Shabbos, Lasas Pchamim, Lasas Barzel, Izmel Shamila. That Rabbi Eliezer's place, they would do different things for the Bris Milah that others wouldn't do, because of the fact that it was his place. I'm not the first to go like this. There are many other poskim who wouldn't veer off the path of the Mechaber Shulchan Aruch. Therefore, I went through all the halachas to practically teach it like the psak of the Beis Yosef, not to turn right or left. This is the understatement of the century. Even though there are many people from Iraqi Jews, their hometown Rav was the Ben Ish Chai, and people were challenging me. Hiksu biyodu mori hagon Reb Ezra Atiyah. My Rebbe, the Rosh Yeshiva Parat Yosef, Reb Ezra Atiyah, told me I'm doing the right thing. Va'oderos ilaham shekos kalacha kasherim levavi v'lo shkiach divrei amon ha'ela ashal yodu v'lo yivinu. Not to listen to these people who don't understand. So Reb Ovadia Yosef strongly went with the psak of the Shulchan Aruch against the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai many times would not go like the Shulchan Aruch. Whether it was because he wanted to be more machmer, whether he argued, the Ben Ish Chai a lot of times is based on Kabbalah. And really a lot of the Sephardic tradition has a lot of Kabbalah mixed in. And Reb Ovadia Yosef was insistent, we have to utilize halacha. There's a halachic process. We paskin things la halacha. And we have to go like the Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch. He's the Mara da Asra, he's the chief of the Sephardic poskim, and he's who we have to follow. And when he writes about this, that he had opposition, that's quite an understatement. Now, there's two biographies in English on Reb Ovadia Yosef. There's one beautiful biography published by ArtScroll, but there's another one, a Sephardic biography published by this Rav Azulai. The ArtScroll biography doesn't tell this story, but the other one does. When Reb Ovadia Yosef came out with one of his first svarim, Chazan Ovadia on Hilchas Pesach. I have one of the original copies. It's pretty cool. But when that sefer came out, so there was a lot in the street of these fights, and it wasn't just the rabble-rousers in the street. There were many rabbanim that were against him. How could he go and paskin against the Ben Ish Chai? And it became a war. So much so that, I guess you call them fanatics, went and they burnt Reb Ovadia Yosef's farm. They burnt, it was actually, he has the sefer Chavon Ovadia on Hilchas Pesach. They burnt it together with the chametz. When Reb Ovadia Yosef found out about it, he was distraught. I'll say it one step clearer. I'm holding back. He had a nervous breakdown. And he was out of commission for weeks. It's right there in the book. Unfortunately, this is the real side of, this man, Reb Ovadia Yosef, was a giant, but at the end of the day, he was a human being. And tough Israeli politics, Haredi politics, whatever you want to call it, Jewish politics, it could break a person. Everyone close to him went and was menachem him and gave him chizuk. This Reb Ezra Atiyah supporting him as you see, it was a big deal. And he overcame those challenges, got back up, and you look at the history, if anything, that made him a stronger person. Because he fought the battles that nobody else is ready to fight. He knows what it means to be knocked down. And he stood up for people. In fact, so what did this idea in Psak Halacha, so you paskin like the Beis Yosef, what really that means, it emerged two different sets of Psak in Klal Yisrael. The Ashkenazic Jews would always paskin, that was already established through the ages, like the Ramah. The Sephardic world was a little bit in confusion. Rabbi Ovadia just clarified it. So Ashkenazim go like the Ramah, but us, Sephardim, we go like the Mechaber. The battle lines were drawn much more clear. And this I didn't find in print. I would love to talk. I know one of my friends, Chashav Sephardic Rabbanim. There's a sefer, should have brought one in, amazing work. There's a sefer, Amudei Hora, on the Mishnah Berurah. This sefer was single-handedly done by a Talmud in Yeshiva Chavetz Chaim, who put together on the Mishnah Berurah as footnotes, and then the back with greater explanations, Rabbi Lior Dahan. An amazing collection, just like Dirshu does on the classic Mishnah Berurah. He does for Sephardic poskim. In fact, he's competing against some whole organization that has like 20, 30 Rabbanim putting together all the different psakim. This one-man show put together the whole thing with extensive, beautiful shiurim in the back. Amazing, amazing work. He was actually a Rebbe. Some of the Talmidim visiting from Queens might have known of him, by Lior Dahan. So I'd love to discuss with him this topic. I didn't get a chance. But I saw Rabbi Ovadia, one of the things he fought was in the beginning of the state of Israel, when they tried to make uniform halachas, they really tried to make halacha uniform for everybody. I'm not getting into all the different issues where this came up. One was this famous case about Yibum, where in the Ashkenazic world, Yibum is not performed. In the Yemenite Sephardic world, it is. And there is resistance and different things. And Rabbi Ovadia's position, the reason why, first, the Ashkenazic Rabbanim wanted one unified position, because there's elements in halacha, lo siskodedu. You're not supposed to have agudos, all these different, tribal differences. You put on the phone, you don't put on the phone, this one does that, this one does this. It's not healthy for Jewish community. It's an Isser in the Torah. So Rabbi Ovadia seemingly skirted the whole issue. Because you're right, if there are 20 different Sephardic customs, 20 different Sephardic halachas, so then you're right, we have to uniform. Okay, so maybe we'll just do the common practice of most observant Jews, Ashkenaz, and just do that. But Rabbi Ovadia unified the Sephardic world. It wasn't agudos. Rabbi Ovadia held on many of these things. It was one thing. There's the Ashkenazic psak, and there's a Sephardic psak. Ashkenazim are going like the Ramah. Sephardim are going like the Beis Yosef. And that's what he did. So, Memela, that led to a clear standard in halacha and gave greater strength to the Sephardic halacha, Sephardic Masorah, that now Sephardim have the right to stand on principle and do their thing. Ashkenazim could do their thing, and Sephardim could do theirs. And he really set up what we have now in the Baruch Hashem, in the Torah world, two tracks. You have an Ashkenazic psak, and you have a Sephardic psak. And I want to show some differences with that. One we talked about a few weeks ago. I gave a share called Svashkenaz, where we talked about if you have a mixed marriage, a Sephardi with an Ashkenazi, and these things come up. Recently someone asked me a shaila about it. But we mentioned the interesting psak of Rav Yosef, that in Eretz Yisrael, we mentioned, who's the Mara da Asra? It's the Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef is the Mara da Asra of Eretz Yisrael. So he so much so holds that normally we say a woman goes after the husband. But in a case of where they're living in Israel, and the woman is Sephardic, and the husband is Ashkenaz, there Ovadia writes, look, the whole reason the woman has to go after the husband is just like because the woman follows the husband to his place. It's the same type of idea of a person moving towns. So for that matter, but if you're in Israel, which is the overreaching area of the Beis Yosef, so how could you compel this woman to go like the Ashkenazic psak if in this area she's in all right to go with the Sephardic psak, the Beis Yosef? So that was one area, but I want to show you another one. And this one is a very interesting halachic nafkamina, even to the degree that it will affect you if you have nice Sephardi bachrim by your table on a Friday night. If you look in the middle of your sheets, Hilchos Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim Siman Kuf Samaches talks about the halachas of brachos, pasabal bekisnin, right? So we know this is a whole big topic unto itself. What is pasabal bekisnin? So yesh mefarshim pasos in kisim shemamoso devasho sukkar v'agozim shkedim utavlim v'nikrin, some type of pockets that you fill with different sweet things. V'yesh omim shu isa. No, it's a regular dough. Sha'arav bo devash or shemen or chalav or mini tavlon. It's a dough where mixed into the dough are some sweet things: honey, oil, milk. And the taste, Machaber's writing, possible bekistin, the taste is recognizable. You taste that sweet thing. The Ramah writes, Shazin nikra pas gomer. No, if you have a dough which has some sweet things in it, so now that's bread. So if you have a dough which is made with something in it sweet, you have an egg challah. So the Ramah is clearly saying that is a dough, that's pas gomer, 100% the brachas hamotzi. That's not this idea of possible bekissin, which would only be a mazonos. If you look, the Mishnah Berurah writes, V'chein noagin, sha'ofen lechem Mishnah and pas, Mishnah pas and ma'at shemen v'tavlin. We have some oil, some spices in that to give taste to our challah. V'chein heskima achronim halacha k'psaka Ramah. And all the achronim halacha paskin like the Ramah. That's in the Ashkenazic world. If you look on the bottom of this version of the Mishnah Berurah, which has the psakim of Ovadia Yosef, he writes, Avo anan bididon kidas moran Shulchan Aruch. We go like the Machaber of Shulchan Aruch. Shekol shenikar tama mesikas bepas berchaso bari meim nezonos v'al mechya. Anything which the bracha, which has this sweetness in it, the bracha is bari meim nezonos. L'chein chavas amasukim shenigrish b'am tam mesikas berchaso bari meim nezonos. If you have any of these sweet egg challahs, halacha would be you would make a mazonos, and you'd only make an al michya afterwards. You're not yotze the din of 3 sudas on Shabbos. Unless you eat a ton of it. This is your whole ikar suda, you kovea suda on them. A Yari Shemaim should only eat these within the meal, but not as the bread for the meal. Rather, what you have to have is simple water challah. So this is a big deal. Since Ovadia Yosef is setting up, look, Ashkenazim go through Ramah, right? The Bnei Yisrael Yotzim biyad Ramah, but the Sfardim go with the psak of the Mechaber Shulchan Aruch. So therefore, what that means is if you would have a Sephardic yeshiva bacher at your table, and normally most people like egg challahs better than water challahs. right? But really, for him to be Yotze his din of eating bread on Shabbos, you can't give him, an egg challah. He would make mazonos on that. You have to give him water challah. Some of the boys here in yeshiva, they know this. Yeshiva prepares them. They come with water challahs. Explain to the person, this is what we do, but this is black and white. This is a psak. Ovadia Yosef says, if you paskin like the mechaber, not like this Ramah, which is a Sephardic psak, it comes out, you can't have regular egg challah, you have to have water challah. Fascinating halacha. Yes. So even for the initial bracha, yeah. They can't make hamotzi on it. They would make mazonos. Yeah, but they still have to eat it. Right? When they're being yotzi with somebody, he's not eating for them. Yes.
You can't just pull out a matzah because there's a question if they can make hamotzi on that.
Oh, yes. I had someone visit me. I had a whole beautiful group of Sephardic Bachrim on my table this week. So someone came to visit, and he saw how the Sephardic Bachrim are beautifully benching. And it takes a while. So he says to me, now I know why they make mazonos on all these types of breads and matzah. Yeah, not so simple. Go to a Sephardic house on Pesach, they'll tell you. Yes. So that's one example of this approach to Psak Halacha and Ovadia Yosef. He strongly took the position in the Beis Yosef, took it to the max. We go like the Beis Yosef everywhere. We don't go like other Sephardic positions, the Ben Ish Chai or others, Chidah, other areas in Halacha, other things might be more based on Kabbalah, other things. In fact, I'll tell you an interesting story. Ovadia Yosef, we all know he wore sunglasses all the time. He had an eye problem. The eye problem really started, as we said, he loved Svarim. And he was famous for finding himself in any library, any place to get his hands on Svarim. And he learned them even late at night. And wouldn't be sufficient lighting. It hurt his eyes. It hurt his eyes so much, he almost lost his vision. And there really was a point in his life where his vision was almost lost. And he went with his son to the kever of the Beis Yosef up in the famous Tzfas cemetery. And he davened by the kever of the Beis Yosef. Psak halacha to go like the Beis Yosef. And he begged the Beis Yosef, please, I want to, excuse the pun, show your vision of halacha to the world. I need my eyesight. And he was miraculously cured. But for the rest of his life, he always wore those sunglasses to protect his eyes. So that's Rebbe Ovadia Yosef's dedication to the Psak of the Beis Yosef. A second area, and this Rebbe Ovadia was also quite famous for, was his Piskei Halacha in terms of Agunos. After the Yom Kippur War in 1973, there were, unfortunately, close to 1,000 Jewish women whose husbands didn't come back. And Israel had for the first time, en masse, such a big Shiloh of Agunos. Now think about it. 1973 is quite important, because that's just when Ovadia Yosef became the chief rabbi of Israel. Kadosh Baruch Hu orchestrated it. It's actually talked from before. Imagine he walks into the position faced with such a crisis of close to 1,000 women without seemingly, stuck, agunas. And Ovadia Yosef sat every single day, constantly going through files and situations and trying to matter all these different agunas. And it was his life's work for those years, day in and day out, work on case after case. Some cases were easier than others. If you have someone in the platoon who was with them and they know that he fell, fine. But many cases, something blew up, there weren't remains. One of the shilas he dealt with, if you look in the back of your sheets, he says, Beheter aguno shel Milchamas Yom Kippurim. He says, also medivri achronim Gadol ha-mitzvah chova mutaras amorei hara. Ovadia Yosef brought many poskim that talk about the importance ha-mutaras amorei hara of antikun lahazik lahoras b'dinei agunos. You have to very much so take a stand in agunos, do whatever you can. Mishum liguna hikilo barabanan. If there's room for a heter, to find a heter to allow this woman to get remarried. And he writes, Don bizihi achalolam alpi discos shebesavaram. When I first read this, I wasn't exactly sure what discus was, but I figured it out. Dog tags. What's the halachic status of a dog tag? You find around the neck of a soldier, or sometimes not around the neck, in his pocket. A dog tag. It says his name, it says his rank, it says his Israeli army number. Is that sufficient proof for the wife to get remarried? You can't recognize any other feature, Rahman al-San, in this body, but you have the dog tag. Is that enough? And it's not pashut. You look further, he writes, in halacha, Gemara in end of Yevamos talks about these cases of someone who goes off, doesn't come back, and let's say that he has a signet ring, he has some staff, and the Gemara says that's not a valid proof for the person, because anything movable a person could lend out. You could lend out your stick, your ring, or some other aspect of that you have. How's that proof that you're the person? You lent it out. The difference of Ovadia strongly held in this case is nobody gives out their dog tag. The dog tag is you. That identification that you wear, even if it was in your pocket. We have the right to assume that that was the person who is there and allowed the women to get remarried based on these dog tags. Fascinating. There's a tshuva. You read the next one. This was unfortunately years later. Sheilah Shenishon Bezin Harab Artzos Abris, New York. B'Shali Cheshvan Tavshin Samach Beis. 2001. B'Dvar HaPkiya HaNora Shenasa B'Artzos Abris. Chav Gimel El Tavshin Samach Aleph. Hashem Olam Lo Haya Kin Kamohu. Right? He's talking about the 9/11. World Trade Center. This attack was on the Twin Towers in America. That these destructive Arabs. It took a big airplane. Their whole intention was to plow this plane into the building. And it killed all the people on the plane. And the fire which came about from the fuel of that plane hit this tower. Cantor Fitzgerald. He had all the details there. 101, Ad Koma 105, Kishesh males over them. He had 600 people working for Cantor Fitzgerald. Everybody for Cantor Fitzgerald passed away because that plane was the direct hit on their offices. So the Shiloh was about this Sephardic man that worked B'Koma Mea Va'arba. He worked on the 104th floor. And the woman says, telephone in the Mishra B'Shah Shmona V'Esrim B'Boker. Her husband called her at 8:20 that morning to wake her up. And after the plane hit, which is at 8:46. Then, at a point later, the husband did call her. Right? She was nervous about it. She called him. And Bishma Shmona v'chamishim u'shtayim. At 8:52, a few minutes after the impact, the husband called back. And he says, yeah, it's crazy over here. And they're evacuating the building. From that point on, she never heard of him. So he was alive after the impact on floor 104. And he called back a few minutes later. But that's the last thing she heard. What's the din in such a case? And this tshuva, Ovadia goes through a lot of sources and a lot of proofs. And this too, he was able to matter. He goes through painstaking every little thing. They clearly were able to place him. They had the cell phone records. He sent emails out that morning from his office computer, which they were able to track. There was no smartphones. Clearly that email stemmed from his computer, from his office. He was there in the building. He was where he was. And based on different studim, Ovadia was ready to matter this woman to get remarried. Absolutely, heartbreaking. Even left out a few details of that particular case. It's too heartbreaking. But this is what Ovadia dealt with. And he was the address, not just for Sephardic shilas, for Ashkenazic shilas. He was looked upon as a tremendous posek in these areas. He had so much expertise dating back to the Yom Kippur War as a baki in Hilchos Agunot. And he was able to find these heterim for these women who otherwise wouldn't get remarried. I'll touch one story on this part. And be careful when I say this. I know I have multiple doctors in the audience. But I'll tell you the story the way it's written. And again, this story, I'm not sure is something that others could replicate. You have to know who you are. But this is what Ovadia did. Ovadia Yosef, the story was set over by his son at the Levaya. Ovadia Yosef, through the years, did different health issues. In the later years, he had some degree of a heart attack. And the doctor said, okay, they're going to have to do a procedure on him. Ovadia Yosef asked from his kids, can I make one request? I go home for 2 hours? Daddy, Tati, Abba, what are you doing? He just had a heart attack. He was awake. He says, they have to do this procedure. He's like, ask the doctors, could they push it off for 2 hours? Obviously, when Ovadia Yosef would come back in, he'd be the first one wheeled in, he'll be taken care of. It wasn't that the chuf that it needed dafka that second. But he asked, could we push it off for 2 hours? He wants to go home first. What do you need in his house? They took him home. He got his will. He said he was in the middle of writing a tshuva to Mater Naguna. He says, I don't know if I'm going to make myself walk out of this surgery alive. He says, you give me 2 hours, I can permit this woman to get remarried. So instead of being wheeled into the emergency room, Ovadia Yosef was wheeled back into the study, finished writing that tshuva, and saved this woman. That's who he was. The third area which I would talk about Ovadia Yosef was his psak lagabe Ethiopian Jews. And this too, I would say, I went through, different write-ups on him. This didn't make the ArtScroll biography either. But Ovadia Yosef was faced with the Shaila. There are many Jews coming from Ethiopia people claiming to be Jewish. Do we accept their claims? Or no, don't consider them Jewish. The only way they're Jewish is they have a gerus. Ovadia himself sent close Talmidim, close Chaverim, to Ethiopia to investigate everything. And he went through, I have the tshuva here on the bottom, and he found two earlier sources that defined these Ethiopian Jews from decades earlier as Jews. So he says, once they defined them as Jews, in halacha we have the concept of a chazaka. We have a legal status. Once you have, they're defined as Jews decades ago. Once they're defined as Jews, now we have a chazaka that we can continue on with that psak, with that understanding. Even in the face of a lot of people challenging him. And this was challenged by many, many other people in Eretz Yisrael, many Ashkenazim and stuff. And Adayom, really the status of Ethiopian Jews, unfortunately, there's a lot of discrimination and other issues. But Ovadia was in the forefront. No, these 100% had the din of Jews. I saw a beautiful story. One time, Ovadia Yosef's house was very hard to get in. Multiple reasons. Obviously, he was the big power player, in the world, Israeli Torah world. But it's also the fact his life was threatened multiple times, and they had to have real tough security. So to get in a minyan with Ovadia wasn't so easy. One time at one of his minyanim, he saw on the back of the minyan were sitting a couple of Ethiopian yeshiva bachrim, and they were sitting in the back. And he saw just from their body language, they'd walk into a room, they would sit in the back, After the minyan, he sends his gabbai, please tell them to come to the front. I want them to come into my room. They're all nervous. What's he going to do? Did we do something wrong? And he went there and sat there and hugged them and kissed them and praised them. He says, you give me so much nachas that you're sitting in yeshiva and you're learning, and you shouldn't view yourself as a second-class citizen. He got discriminated against in life, but he would do anything to uplift the stature of another Jew. Doesn't matter what he looks like. That's what Ovadia Yosef did. So I think these three areas in halacha, his general approach to psak halacha, which has many, many ramifications to us, what he did in the realm of agunos, as well as the chapter on the Ethiopian Jews, which the Israeli government used his psak to bring many Ethiopian Jews to Israel, is a tremendous legacy. Shows us a glimpse of this person. I want to just end with two things. I had a Talmud of mine, a member back in Brooklyn, whose family was well connected. Remember that year, this guy's father was big in Uman. So the Talmud asked me, Rebbe, can I go to Uman for Rosh Hashanah? Okay, my father runs this whole program. He talks all about it. Okay, fine. So he goes to Uman for Rosh Hashanah. Comes back 2 days later. Rebbe, I'm going to Eretz Yisrael for Yom Kippur. I was going to slap him. What? You just went to Uman for a few days for Rosh Hashanah. Now you're running and going to Eretz Yisrael for Yom Kippur? Rebbe, you don't understand. I got into the private minyan in Ovadia Yosef. I'm like, Phil, come on. Yeah, you're a globetrotter, going here, you're going there. Learn. Okay, he's insisting. Fine, he went. So, daven by Ovadia. I remember he came back to me, what that impact of davening 1 year. This is I think it was the second to last year of Ovadia's life. He davened in this private minyan by Ovadia Yosef. And at Motzi Yom Kippur, everyone goes to eat. So they brought all food, everyone's eating. He said he watched. Everybody was eating. Ovadia Yosef had some cake and drink, and then he snuck away. The rest of the family sitting eating. He went back to his study and just started to learn. the impact that this had on a 17-year-old bacher, what the importance of Limud Torah is something, just to see that in action. Here, this older person, he spent the whole day in shul davening, but away from learning. More than he needed food, he needed learning. And I'll end such a beautiful story. At the end of the art school biography, they have a postscript they call "If the Sfarim Could Speak." His whole entire life, Ovadia Yosef was somebody who treasured Sfarim, who treasured to find another idea in halacha, another source to establish a position, and he loved Sfarim. His room was filled with them, and he knew them from page to page. The family says when they were bringing him to the hospital for the final time, which he didn't recover, and he was leaving his house, so he knew this might be the last time. Obviously not an easy thing. But what got him to break down in tears when he left his study for the last time. In that room, he sat, and he might have been a political figure, might have been someone. He did go out to the people and gave shiurim all around Eretz Yisrael. But what was quite amazing about this man was the power of his Jewish leaders, poskim and Gadolim, have done through the centuries. He was a man of the book, a man of many books. From that study in his house in Har Nof, he affected and changed the lives of so many. May his story and life be inspiration for all. Thank you very much.